50 women, supermodels, heiresses, actresses drifted past him like they were auditioning for his attention. He didn't look at a single one. He was tall, 6'2" easy, with black hair styled like it had been instructed not to move. 50 women. I know, because I counted. I was 26 that night, wearing the Waldorf's required uniform, black and white, heels that murdered my arches, hair pulled back so tight my scalp ached. I was invisible by design, furniture with a pulse, a tray with legs. Let me be clear about something right now. This isn't a love story. It's a killing. It just took longer than most. The Waldorf Astoria ballroom was a glittering trap that night. Crystal chandeliers dripped light like honey, thick and golden, pooling on skin that cost surgeons' fees to perfect. The air tasted like champagne and ambition, like perfume designed to make men stupid and women competitive. Models, actual runway-tested, contract-signed models, moved through the crowd in gowns that whispered promises their eyes had no intention of keeping. And Min-jae Kang stood in the center of it all like a knife nobody wanted to touch. I didn't know his name then. I didn't know what he was. But I knew danger when I saw it, and he wore it better than that Tom Ford tuxedo. There was a scar cut through his left eyebrow, thin and pale, the kind you get from someone who wanted to blind you and missed. His face was the sort of beautiful that makes you want to check the exits. Sharp jaw, mouth that didn't smile, eyes so dark they swallowed light instead of reflecting it, and those eyes were bored. I had 3 jobs back then: the cafe in Brooklyn at dawn, auditions in the afternoon that went nowhere, event gigs like this at night, serving champagne to people who spent more on cufflinks than I made in a month. I had rules to survive places like this. Smile like you mean it. Don't make eye contact longer than necessary. Never accept anything from a man who looks at you like you're dessert. I should have had a 4th rule. Never let a predator see you breathe. But I was tired, bone deep, soul-scraped, tired. My feet screamed inside shoes that didn't fit. My brain was already doing math. Rent, groceries, the electric bill I'd been dodging. I moved through the ballroom like I was swimming through shallow water, balancing my tray, smiling my professional smile, letting insults and wandering hands slide off me like I was coated in something slick. A woman in diamonds snapped her fingers at me like I was a dog. A man brushed my hip and pretended it was an accident. I kept my face smooth, my voice soft, because rage didn't pay rent. Then the music changed. Something slow and aching poured out of the orchestra, strings pulling at the air like they were trying to drag secrets out of the ceiling. The crowd shifted, parting near the bar, and I slipped into the gap with my tray raised just high enough to stay out of reach. That's when I saw him fully. Not just another suit. Not just another bored billionaire. Him. Standing alone in a pocket of space that felt deliberate, like people had been trained not to get too close. His stillness wasn't calm. It was control. The kind that comes from knowing exactly how much damage you can do and choosing not to, yet. I should have kept walking. Should have delivered my drinks, collected my tips, gone home to my cramped apartment and forgotten he existed. But I didn't. I made a mistake. I smiled. Not the polite curve I gave to men who tipped with their egos. Not the empty performance I wore like armor. A real smile. It cracked out of me without permission. 3 seconds of something honest in a room built on lies. Warm and unguarded and stupid. I felt it light up my face, soften my eyes, pull at muscles I'd been holding tight all night. And the air shattered. I don't know how else to describe it. 1 second, the ballroom was noise and heat and motion. The next, the world narrowed to a single point of pressure between my shoulder blades. Someone was watching me, not looking, hunting. My body knew before my brain caught up. My pulse spiked. My skin went cold and then hot. My fingers tightened on the tray hard enough to leave marks. I glanced back over my shoulder, and his eyes locked onto mine like a gun finding its target. The distance between us wasn't far, 20 feet, maybe less, but it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing the ground had already started to crumble. He wasn't smiling. He looked destroyed. like something inside him had just been ripped open and he didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. And I felt it. That electric jolt of recognition, the way your body knows a storm is coming before the sky even darkens. My breath stopped. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Heat flooded my face, my throat, my chest. I turned and walked, fast, too fast, toward the staff entrance, weaving through bodies that suddenly felt too close, too warm. I pushed through the heavy service door and it swung shut behind me with a dull, final thud. The corridor was bright and brutal. Fluorescent lights, industrial carpet, the smell of cleaning chemicals and reheated food. Marisol looked up from her tray, eyes narrowing. "Girl, what happened? You look like someone just threatened your life." I opened my mouth to lie, but the words didn't come, because my phone buzzed in my apron pocket, once, sharp and insistent. Unknown number. I pulled it out with shaking hands. One message, no name, just 5 words that turned my blood to ice. "I know where you live." The text sat on my phone like a bomb that hadn't decided whether to detonate yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my narrow bed in the Brooklyn apartment I shared with 2 roommates and a cat that hated everyone, staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator hiss and clang like it was trying to warn me. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, but I could feel it there, that message pulsing like a second heartbeat. "I know where you live." 5 words, anonymous, impossible to trace. And the worst part? I believed them. I thought about calling the police, spent an hour rehearsing what I'd say. "Officer, a rich man at a charity gala looked at me, and now I'm being threatened." Yeah, that would go well. They'd write it down, nod sympathetically, and file it under paranoid black girl overreacting to a wrong number. So I did what I always did when the world felt like it was closing in. I got up at 5 in the morning and went to work. The Brooklyn Cafe where I pulled my first shift was the kind of place that survived on regulars and stubbornness. Cheap coffee, cheaper breakfast sandwiches, linoleum floors that had seen better decades. The owner, Mr. Castellano, paid under the table and asked no questions, which made it perfect for people like me, people juggling 3 jobs and still drowning. I tied on my apron, started the espresso machine, and tried to convince myself that last night had been nothing, a coincidence, a drunk text meant for someone else. I was almost succeeding. Then the door chimed at 6:47 a.m., and he walked in. Min-jae Kang, the man from the ballroom. Except now he wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was in dark jeans that fit like they'd been tailored, a black leather jacket that probably cost more than my rent, and boots that made no sound on the floor. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. The scar through his eyebrow caught the morning light. He looked like he hadn't slept either. And he looked directly at me. Every instinct I had screamed, "Run!" But I was behind the counter, apron on, espresso machine hissing behind me, and Mr. Castellano was in the back prepping eggs. There was nowhere to go, no escape route that didn't involve making a scene. So I did what I'd learned to do in every dangerous situation I'd ever been in. I smiled, professional, empty, the smile that said, "I don't know you." "What can I get you?" My voice came out steady. I was proud of that. He didn't smile back. He just looked at me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve, like every piece of me mattered, and he had all the time in the world to figure it out. "Coffee," he said. His voice was deeper than I'd expected. Rough, like gravel wrapped in silk, tinged with an accent that softened some consonants and sharpened others. Korean heritage filtered through American schools. Black, no sugar. I rang him up. $4. He handed me 100. "I don't have change for that," I said flatly. "Keep it. I'm not a charity case." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, something darker. "I know." I made his coffee in silence, hyper-aware of his eyes tracking every movement. The way I pulled the espresso shot, the way I poured, the way my hand stayed steady even though my pulse was a war drum. I slid the cup across the counter. Our fingers brushed, Electricity shot up my arm, sharp and undeniable, and I yanked my hand back like I'd touched a live wire. He felt it too. I saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his breath changed, just barely, just enough. "You were at the Waldorf last night," he said. Not a question. "I work events sometimes." "I know." He took a sip of coffee, eyes never leaving mine. "You smiled." My stomach dropped. "I smile at a lot of people. It's part of the job." "Not like that." The air between us thickened, became something I could taste. Smoke and danger and a pull I didn't want to name. "Did you send me a text last night?" I asked, voice low and sharp. He blinked. Confusion flickered across his face, genuine enough that I almost believed it. "No." "What text?" I pulled out my phone, showed him the screen. "I know where you live." His expression went cold, not angry, something worse, calculated. "That wasn't me," he said quietly, "but I'll find out who it was." "How did you find this place?" I demanded. "How did you know where I work?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw the truth. "You had me followed," I said, and my voice was shaking now, not with fear, but with fury. "You tracked me down. Yes." The honesty of it was almost worse than a lie. "Why?" He set the coffee down, leaned forward slightly, and the intensity in his gaze nearly knocked me backward. "Because I walked past 50 women last night and didn't see a single one. Then you smiled and I forgot my own name." It should have sounded like a line, like something rehearsed, designed to disarm, but he said it like a confession, like it cost him something to admit. "That's not romantic," I said, voice hard. "That's stalking." "I know. Then leave." "I can't." The door chimed. A regular walked in, Mrs. Chen, who ordered the same thing every morning. I turned away from him, made her tea, smiled, chatted about the weather, and the whole time I felt him standing there, waiting, like he had nowhere else to be. When Mrs. Chen left, I faced him again. "I don't date criminals," I said bluntly. His eyebrows lifted. "What makes you think I'm a criminal?" "Men who look like you, who move like you, who have people followed at 6 in the morning, you're not a hedge fund manager. You're something worse." For a long moment, he was silent. Then he smiled, and it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. "You're right." My breath caught. "My name is Min-jae Kang," he said. "My family runs one of the largest Korean organized crime networks in New York. I inherited it when I was 23. I'm trying to make it legitimate, to clean up what my father built. But that takes time. And in the meantime, yes, some of what I do lives in shadows." I should have run, should have called the police, quit my job, moved apartments, disappeared. But I didn't, because he was still standing there, looking at me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to something human. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. "Because you deserve the truth." His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "And because I won't build anything with you on lies." "There's no anything to build," I said. "You need to leave." "1 hour," he said. "Give me 1 hour. Lunch. Just talk. If you hate it, I'll walk away and you'll never see me again." "You just admitted you're a crime boss." "I did." "And you think I'm going to have lunch with you?" "I'm hoping." I stared at him, at the scar, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the way he held himself like he was used to being alone. And I thought about my brother, Marcus, 22 years old, shot in a gang war in Oakland 5 years ago. Wrong place, wrong time. Just walking home from work when bullets started flying over territory that didn't belong to anyone who mattered. I'd sworn I'd never touch that world again. Never date anyone involved in violence. Never risk loving someone who might not come home. "No," I said. His face didn't change, but something behind his eyes dimmed. He nodded once, set a business card on the counter. "If you ever change your mind." He turned to leave, and my phone buzzed. I looked down. Another text. Unknown number. A photo this time. My mother's house in California, the front porch, the address visible on the mailbox, and a message beneath it. He's not the only one watching. My hands went numb. The cup I'd been holding slipped, shattered on the floor. MJ spun around, saw my face, crossed the space between us in 2 strides. What is it? I showed him the phone, and I watched his expression turn into something I'd seen before, on men who'd decided someone needed to stop breathing. Pack a bag, he said, voice flat and deadly. You're coming with me, right now. I didn't go with him that morning. Let me be clear about that, because it matters for what comes later, for understanding why I made the choices I made, why I believed the things I believed. I told Min-jae Kang to leave my cafe, to take his threats and his protection and his beautiful, dangerous face somewhere else. I told him I'd handle it myself, that I didn't need a crime boss playing hero in my life. He looked at me for a long time, jaw tight, hands clenched like he was physically restraining himself from throwing me over his shoulder and dragging me to safety. Then he left, but not before making a call in Korean, fast, clipped, authority in every syllable, and I knew without understanding a single word that he'd just put people on me, watchers, guards, protection I hadn't asked for and couldn't refuse. That was 3 days ago. 3 days of looking over my shoulder, 3 days of unknown numbers going silent when I answered. 3 days of my roommate Keisha asking why I kept checking the locks, why I flinched at car doors slamming, why I looked like I was waiting for something terrible to happen. I didn't tell her, didn't tell anyone, because saying it out loud would make it real, and I was still trying to convince myself this was temporary. A misunderstanding, a wrong place, wrong time situation that would resolve itself if I just kept my head down and stayed invisible. Then my mother called. "Baby," Rochelle Monroe said, voice tight in that way that meant she was trying not to scare me. "There's a car parked across the street, black SUV, tinted windows, been there since yesterday." My blood turned to ice. "Mom, listen to me very carefully," I said. "Pack a bag. Go stay with Aunt Simone in Oakland. Don't tell me when you're leaving, just go." "Aaliyah, what's going on?" "Please, Mama, just trust me." There was a pause. Then, "Does this have anything to do with that man who came by asking about you?" Everything stopped. "What man?" 2 days ago, expensive suit, polite, said he was an old friend trying to reconnect. I told him you moved to New York years ago, that I didn't have your current address. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. What did he look like? Older, Asian, cold eyes. He smiled, baby, but it didn't reach his face. Not MJ, his father. "Mama, go to Aunt Simone's, right now. I'll explain later, please." She heard it in my voice, the fear, the urgency, and she didn't argue. Rochelle Monroe had raised 2 kids in a neighborhood where you learn to recognize danger by the sound of it breathing. "I'm leaving in 10 minutes, she said. "But Aaliyah, whatever you're in, get out. Nothing is worth your life." She hung up. I sat on my bed staring at the wall, trying to figure out how my life had become this in less than a week. Then my phone rang. MJ. I answered before I could stop myself. "Your mother's safe," he said without preamble. "I have people watching her route. She'll make it to Oakland without incident." "You're tracking my mother?" "I'm protecting her. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting." "Aaliyah." His voice softened just slightly. "My father sent someone to her house. That means this isn't just about scaring you anymore. He's escalating. You need to let me help." "Why?" I demanded. "Why do you even care? You saw me smile at a gala. That's it. That's all we are. Why are you doing this?" Silence. Then, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "Because when I look at you, I remember what it feels like to want something that isn't covered in blood." My throat closed. "Meet me," he said. "Not somewhere fancy. Somewhere I can show you who I'm trying to be, not who I was. 1 hour. Then you decide." I should have said no. Should have blocked his number, quit my jobs, left New York, started over somewhere his name didn't reach. But my mother's frightened voice was still echoing in my head, and I was so tired of being afraid. "Where?" I asked. He gave me an address in Queens. I expected a restaurant, maybe a safe house, someplace that screamed money and power and control. I did not expect a community center. The building was old but cared for, brick painted bright yellow, murals covering one side, kids playing, hands reaching up toward a painted sky. Through the windows I could see a gym, mats on the floor, and children in white doughbox moving through forms with serious faces and careful precision. MJ was standing outside, waiting for me. Jeans and a plain black t-shirt, hair slightly messy, no leather jacket, no expensive watch. He looked normal. Almost. "You teach taekwondo?" I said, because it was the only thing my brain could process. "3 times a week," he said. "Kids from the neighborhood. Keeps them off the streets. Gives them discipline. Community." He paused. "My brother used to run this place before he died. I kept it going." The way he said brother, like the word was a wound that never healed, made something crack in my chest. "Come inside," he said. "Watch, then we'll talk." I followed him in. The center smelled like sweat and floor wax and something else. Hope, maybe. Or just the stubborn refusal to give up. Kids ranging from 6 to 16 were lined up in rows, practicing kicks and blocks with a focus that felt almost sacred. An older instructor was calling out commands in Korean, and they responded in unison, voices sharp and clear. MJ bowed before stepping onto the mat. The kids' faces lit up. "Master MJ!" A little girl, maybe 8, ran up to him. "Watch my kick! I've been practicing!" And I watched this man, this crime boss, this heir to violence, kneel down to her level and give her his full attention, watched him correct her form with gentle hands, watched him praise her effort with a smile that transformed his entire face, watched him teach, not with cruelty or intimidation, with patience, with care, with love. For an hour, I sat on a bench against the wall and witnessed a version of Min-jae Kang that didn't fit anything I thought I knew. He was firm but kind, demanded excellence but celebrated effort, made the kids laugh, made them feel seen, made them feel safe. When the class ended, the kids bowed, scattered to collect their bags and shoes, and MJ walked over to me. "This is what I want," he said quietly. "Centers like this all over the city. Programs, scholarships, alternatives. My father thinks it's a waste of resources, says I should focus on the family business, on maintaining power." "What do you think?" I asked. "I think power is worthless if you're not using it to make things better." His eyes met mine. "I think my father built an empire, but lost his soul doing it, and I don't want to make the same mistake." We walked out together, into the soft afternoon light, and sat on the steps, the same steps where, years later, everything would start to fall apart. But I didn't know that yet. "My brother was killed in a gang shooting," I said, voice steady even though the words still hurt. 5 years ago, Oakland, wrong place, wrong time. He was 22, I was 21. MJ's hand found mine, squeezed gently. "I swore I'd never get involved with anyone connected to that world," I continued. "Never risk it. Never put myself in that position again." "I understand," he said. "But you're not your father," I said, turning to face him. "You're teaching kids taekwondo. You're trying to go legitimate. You're telling me the truth even though it might make me run." I took a shaky breath. "That's not nothing, MJ." "It's not enough," he said. "Not to make up for what I've done. Maybe not, but it's a start." Hope flickered in his eyes, fragile, cautious, like he was afraid to believe it. "What does this mean?" he asked. "It means we start honest. No lies, no games. You tell me everything, and I'll decide what I can handle. Deal." We sat there as the sun dipped lower, as kids streamed past us laughing, as the city hummed around us. And for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I looked down. A photo. MJ and me, on the steps, taken from across the street, and beneath it, a message that turned my blood to ice. Your mother's house, 24771 Maple Drive. Tell him to back off, or we send flowers to her funeral. MJ saw my face, took the phone, read the message, and the man who'd been gentle with children a moment ago disappeared. What took his place was a predator. Stay here, he said, voice flat and deadly. MJ, stay here. He made a call, spoke in rapid Korean, every word a blade. Then he turned back to me, and his eyes were full of a rage so cold it burned. My father just declared war, he said, and he doesn't know it yet, but he's already lost. They came for my life in pieces, not all at once, not with guns or blood or anything I could point to and say, there, that's the danger. That would have been easier, cleaner. I would have known how to fight back. Instead, they dismantled me like I was a machine they'd studied, like they knew exactly which screws to loosen until everything collapsed. It started small. The cafe let me go 3 days after the photo. Mr. Castellano pulled me aside during my shift, wouldn't meet my eyes, and said business was slow. He had to make cuts, nothing personal. But his hands were shaking when he handed me my last paycheck, and I saw the way he kept glancing at the door like he was expecting someone to walk through it. Did someone threaten you? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 days later, my audition for a national commercial, the one I'd been preparing for, the one that could have changed everything, was canceled. No explanation. Just a terse email. We've decided to go in a different direction. I called my agent. She was apologetic, confused, said she'd try to find out what happened. She stopped returning my calls after that. Then my landlord, who'd been happy to take my rent late for 2 years, suddenly sent an eviction notice, said the building was going condo, all tenants had 30 days to vacate. But when I ran into my neighbor in the hallway, she looked at me like I'd done something terrible. What did you do, Aaliyah? She whispered. 2 men came by asking about you, scared the hell out of Mr. Petrov. He won't say why, but everyone's talking. My world was shrinking. Every door I'd fought to keep open was slamming shut, and I couldn't prove a single thing. Keisha found me crying in the bathroom on the 5th night, curled on the floor with my knees pulled to my chest, trying to breathe through the panic. Talk to me, she said, sliding down to sit beside me. What's happening? I can't. My voice was wrecked, raw. If I tell you, they'll come after you too. Who's they? I just shook my head. She held me while I fell apart, and I hated myself for being weak, for letting them break me, for not being strong enough to fight men who moved in shadows and destroyed lives without ever showing their faces. MJ called every day. I didn't answer. Because part of me understood with a clarity that felt like swallowing glass, that the moment I let him in, the moment I let him fix this, I'd be admitting that I couldn't survive without him, that I needed his protection, his power, his world. And I'd sworn I'd never need that. But on the 7th day, when I came home and found my apartment door standing open, not broken, just open, like someone had a key, I finally understood what they were telling me. Nowhere is safe. Nothing inside was gone. That was the worst part. They hadn't stolen anything, hadn't trashed the place, hadn't left a mess. They'd just rearranged things. My books were stacked in a different order. My photos were turned face down. My bed was made with hospital corners I'd never used. The bathroom mirror had a single handprint on it, deliberately placed, still slightly damp. And on my pillow, there was an envelope. Expensive stationery, cream-colored, my name written in elegant script. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Me, sleeping. Taken from inside my bedroom. Taken last night. I dropped it like it had burned me, stumbled backward, hit the wall, and slid down to the floor. They'd been in my room while I slept, stood over me, watched me, and left proof. I don't remember calling him. Don't remember unlocking my phone or finding his number or pressing the button. But suddenly his voice was in my ear, low, urgent, dangerous. Aaliyah, talk to me. They were in my room. I barely recognized my own voice. Thin, shaking, small. They took a picture of me sleeping. MJ, they were in my room. Where are you right now? Home, my apartment, the door was open and... Get out. His voice cut through my panic like a blade. Right now. Don't pack. Don't think. Walk out the front door and go to the nearest public place, coffee shop, store, anywhere with people. I'm sending someone to get you. I can't. Aaliyah. And the way he said my name, like it was the only word that mattered, like he'd burn the world down to keep it safe, made something break and rebuild inside me all at once. I know you don't want this. I know you don't want me, but I'm not letting them hurt you, not while I'm breathing. Now, move. I moved, grabbed my phone and my keys and walked out, legs shaking, heart slamming against my ribs, down the stairs, through the lobby, out onto the street where the evening crowd swallowed me in noise and motion and the illusion of safety. I walked 3 blocks to a 24-hour diner and sat in a booth by the window where everyone could see me, where being alone was impossible. Ordered coffee I didn't drink. Waited. 15 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside. Not an SUV, a sedan. Quiet, unremarkable. The back door opened. MJ stepped out. He scanned the street with the kind of awareness that came from years of expecting ambush, then walked into the diner. His eyes found me immediately. He crossed the space in 4 strides, slid into the booth across from me, and just looked at me for a long moment. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Did they touch you? Threaten you directly?" "No, just this." I showed him the photo. His jaw tightened. Something lethal flickered behind his eyes. He made a call, spoke in Korean, voice clipped and cold, then hung up and turned back to me. "You're coming with me," he said. "Not a request, not a negotiation. You're staying somewhere they can't reach you until I handle this." "I can't just..." "Yes, you can." He leaned forward, and I saw the exhaustion in his face, the fear he was trying to hide beneath control. "Aaliyah, my father is not going to stop. He's not trying to scare you anymore. He's showing you what he can do. Next time, it won't be a photograph. It'll be worse. What does he want? For you to disappear. For me to fall in line. For everything to go back to how it was before I met you." His hand reached across the table, covered mine, and I will burn his empire to ash before I let that happen. "This is insane," I whispered. "We barely know each other." "I know." His thumb traced slow circles on my wrist, over my pulse. But I walked past 50 perfect women and felt nothing. Then you smiled, and something in me that was dead came back to life. So no, we don't know each other. Not yet. But I know I'm not letting you go. Not like this. I should have argued. Should have told him I could handle it myself. But I was so tired of being afraid. So tired of fighting alone. "One condition," I said. "Anything. You tell me everything. Who your father is, what you've done, what you're planning. No more secrets." He nodded slowly. "Deal." We left the diner together. He guided me to the car with a hand on the small of my back, protective and possessive all at once. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back at my building, at the life I'd built alone, the independence I'd fought for, and watched it disappear into the distance. MJ's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his expression went cold. "What is it?" I asked. He handed me the phone without a word. A message. Unknown number. A photo of my mother's car, parked outside Aunt Simone's house in Oakland, and beneath it, "Cute that he thinks distance matters. She looks peaceful when she sleeps too. 3 days, Aaliyah. Tell him to walk away or we make sure she never wakes up." The world tilted. MJ took the phone back, made another call, and when he spoke this time, his voice was a promise wrapped in violence. "Protect her. 24-hour detail. No one gets within 100 feet. I don't care what it costs." He hung up and looked at me. "I have to end this," I said, voice hollow. "I have to walk away from you. It's the only way to keep her safe." "No, MJ, they're going to kill my mother. They're not. His eyes locked on mine, and I saw the man he'd been before he tried to go legitimate. The killer, the heir, the weapon his father had forged. Because I'm going to war, and when it's over, no one will ever threaten you again. You can't watch me. And in that moment, in the back of that quiet car speeding through Brooklyn, I understood what I'd done. I hadn't just caught the attention of a man trying to change. I'd woken up the monster he'd been trying to bury, and now that monster was hunting for me. I'm going to tell you about the 3 best weeks of my life. Not because they were perfect, not because we didn't still carry scars, but because for 21 days, I got to see what happiness looked like on Min-jae Kang's face, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. We didn't rush back into anything. No grand declarations, no immediate moving in together, no pretending the last 3 months hadn't carved canyons between us that needed careful crossing. We started slow. Coffee in the mornings before my shift at a new cafe in Brooklyn, one MJ didn't own, didn't have connections to, where I could work on my own merit. Lunch when our schedules aligned. Evenings at the community center where I'd watch him teach and sometimes help with the younger kids who needed an extra pair of hands. Nights were harder. I'd go back to my new apartment, a studio in a better neighborhood, paid for with what was left of the blood money I hadn't been able to bring myself to spend. And he'd go back to a modest 2-bedroom in Queens that was nothing like the penthouse he'd lost when the assets were seized. We'd text until one of us fell asleep. Miss you. Miss you more. That's not possible. Wanna bet? Stupid, sweet things that made my chest ache in the best way. On the 5th day, he took me to see his father. Not in person. I wouldn't have survived that, and MJ knew it. But he took me to the federal courthouse during a hearing, and we sat in the back of the gallery while Kang Seong-hwan was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. The man who'd threatened my mother, who'd violated my home, who'd dismantled my life piece by piece. He looked smaller than I'd imagined, older, diminished, like prison had already started eating him from the inside. His eyes scanned the courtroom, cold, calculating, still looking for angles even in chains. Then they landed on MJ, and something ugly twisted across his face. Not anger, worse, disappointment. Like MJ had failed some test that mattered more than love or loyalty or right and wrong. MJ stared back, expression carved from stone, and didn't look away until his father did. We left before the hearing ended. Stood on the courthouse steps in weak October sunlight, and I watched MJ breathe like he'd been holding it for months. You okay? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. I keep waiting to feel guilty, to regret it, but all I feel is relief. Like I can finally breathe without waiting for him to take the air away. That's not wrong, I said gently. Isn't it? He's my father. I destroyed him. He destroyed himself, I corrected. You just stopped letting him destroy you too. MJ looked at me then. Really looked, and something in his face softened. How did I get this lucky? He asked quietly. You walked past 50 models and had terrible taste, I said, smiling. That's not luck. That's just poor judgment. He laughed, real and surprised and beautiful, and kissed me right there on the courthouse steps while lawyers and reporters and strangers flowed past us like we were the only still point in a rushing world. On the 10th day, I took him to meet my mother. We flew to California. His treat, though he made it seem casual, like plane tickets were nothing. Rochelle Monroe opened the door of Aunt Simone's house, took one look at MJ, and her expression went carefully neutral. So you're the reason my daughter disappeared for 3 months, she said. Yes, ma'am, MJ said. No excuses, no deflection, just truth. You put her in danger. Yes, ma'am, I did. And I spent 3 months making sure that danger was eliminated. But I understand if you can't forgive that. My mother studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at me. You love him? Yes, Mama. He treat you right? Better than I knew I deserved. He make you happy? Happier than I've been in years. She sighed, stepped aside, gestured for us to come in. Then I guess you better come in before the neighbors start talking. We spent the weekend in Oakland. MJ charmed my mother with patience and honesty, won over Aunt Simone by fixing her kitchen sink without being asked, and sat through 3 hours of family photo albums without complaint. That last night, my mother pulled me aside while MJ was helping with dishes. He's been through something terrible, she said quietly. I can see it in his eyes. Whatever you two survived, it left marks. I know, Mama. You sure you want this? Sure you want to love someone who carries that much weight? I looked through the doorway at MJ laughing at something Aunt Simone said, dish towel over his shoulder, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him since we reunited. I'm sure, I said. He walked away from everything for me. Least I can do is walk toward him. My mother pulled me into a hug that smelled like cocoa butter and safety. Then you bring him back to visit, she said. And you be careful, baby. Men like that, men who've seen violence, sometimes it follows them even when they try to leave it behind. I should have listened, should have heard the warning in her words, but I was too happy to hear anything, except the sound of MJ's laugh and the promise of a future that finally felt possible. On the 14th day, he asked me to move in with him. We were at the community center, late evening after the last class had cleared out. Just us in the quiet gym, sitting on the floor with our backs against the wall. I know it's fast, he said. I know we're still figuring things out, but I hate going to sleep without you, hate waking up in a place you're not, and I keep thinking, we wasted 3 months being apart. I don't want to waste any more time. That's very romantic, I said, smiling. But your apartment has 1 bathroom and questionable water pressure. So we'll get a new place, something with 2 bathrooms, great water pressure, wherever you want. I don't care about the address as long as you're there. I kissed him, slow and sweet and full of yes. Okay, I said. Let's find a home. On the 19th day, we found it. A 2-bedroom in Astoria. 3rd floor, hardwood floors, big windows, a kitchen with actual counter space. Affordable because MJ had liquidated almost everything and I was still rebuilding my finances, but perfect because it was ours. We signed the lease together, and that night we sat on the empty floor eating takeout and planning where furniture would go. Couch there, I said, pointing. TV on that wall. Bookshelf by the window, MJ added. We'll need a bigger bed. We'll need sheets that match, I countered. You can't just use whatever's clean. I've been a bachelor for years. Matching sheets weren't a priority. Well, they are now. I have standards. He grinned. I'm aware. You made me wait 10 dates before you'd let me kiss you. I was being careful. You were being cruel, he teased. I was dying. Good, I said, laughing. Made you work for it. We kissed there on the empty floor, surrounded by takeout containers and possibility, and I thought, this is it. This is the life we get to have now. On the 21st day, everything ended. We were at the community center, our place, the location that meant safety and second chances and kids learning to be strong. Evening class. 12 students ranging from 8 to 15. MJ leading them through forms while I sat on the bench grading their technique sheets, occasionally calling out encouragement. The energy was good. The kids were focused. Everything felt normal. Then the doors opened. 2 men walked in. I noticed them immediately because they didn't belong. Too old to be parents picking up students. Too well-dressed for the neighborhood. And the way they moved, purposeful, controlled, like soldiers on a mission, made every hair on my body stand up. MJ saw them a heartbeat later. His entire body went still. That predator stillness I'd seen once before in a ballroom full of people who didn't know they were standing next to something dangerous. Class dismissed, he said, voice calm but absolute. Everyone out now. The kids knew that tone, knew better than to argue. They grabbed their bags and scattered toward the back exit, and I started to follow, started to herd them out. "Not you, Miss Monroe," one of the men said in Korean accented English. "You stay!" MJ stepped between us, smooth, protective, a wall of muscle and violence barely restrained. "You want to send a message? Send it to me," he said quietly. "She has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with this," the man said. "You destroyed our lives for her, turned on your family for her, put us in cages for her. Now you get to watch us take her away." The second man pulled a gun, not quickly, not in a panic, just efficient, like he'd done it 1,000 times. And I watched MJ's face transform. The man I'd fallen in love with, the teacher, the reformer, the one trying to be better, disappeared. What took his place was the weapon his father had built. "You're not leaving here alive," MJ said. And it wasn't a threat. It was a fact. "Neither are you," the gunman replied. Time fractured. MJ moved first, fast, brutal, trained reflexes taking over. He closed the distance before the gunman could aim properly, hand snapping up to redirect the barrel just as it fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet missed. But it wouldn't be the last. MJ and the gunman went down in a tangle of violence, and the second man lunged toward me. I ran, not away, not toward the exit. I'm 38 years old now, 12 years older than the girl who smiled at a charity gala and broke a man's world open. Old enough to understand that some stories don't have happy endings, no matter how hard you fight for them. Old enough to know that love and loss are just two sides of the same knife, and both cut equally deep. I'm telling you this from the other side of everything, from a life I built on the ashes of the one I lost, and I need you to understand. I went back to him. That matters. It has to matter. Because if I don't tell you that part, if I let you think I abandoned him, that I chose fear over love, then you won't understand why his death destroyed me. Why I still wake up some mornings reaching for a body that isn't there. Why I can't walk past community centers without my chest cracking open. I went back after 6 days. 6 days of Keisha holding me while I cried. 6 days of my mother calling every night, voice gentle and knowing, saying, "Baby, running from fear doesn't make you safe. It just makes you alone." 6 days of staring at my phone, reading his texts. "I love you. I'm not giving up. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." And feeling something inside me shift and settle, and finally understand what it had known all along. I loved him, more than I feared the violence, more than I feared the past catching up, more than I feared losing him, I feared never having tried. So on the 6th day, I went to the community center. Evening class, Tuesday, the time he always taught. I stood outside in the October cold, watching through the window as MJ moved kids through their forms with that patient intensity I'd fallen in love with. He looked tired, thinner, like he hadn't been sleeping or eating properly, like he'd been dying by inches without me. The class ended, the kids scattered, and I pushed through the door before my courage could fail. He was collecting equipment, back turned, and when he heard the door, he said without looking, "We're closed for the night. Classes resume tomorrow?" "I'm not here for a class," I said. He spun around so fast he nearly dropped the practice pads in his hands. "Aaliyah." My name in his voice was every prayer I'd ever heard. "I'm sorry," I said, voice shaking. "I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I made you think I didn't want this. I'm sorry." He crossed the space between us in 4 strides and kissed me so hard we both stopped breathing. His hands were in my hair, on my face, pulling me closer like he was trying to memorize me through touch alone. And I kissed him back just as desperately, tasting relief and love and the specific flavor of coming home. "Don't apologize," he breathed against my mouth. "Don't ever apologize for being scared. I was scared too. I'm still scared." "Then let's be scared together," I whispered. "Let's move into our apartment and buy matching sheets and figure out how to build a life even when the past keeps trying to tear it down." "You mean it?" "I mean it. I love you. I choose you. Even with the risk. Even with the fear. I choose you, MJ. His smile was the sun breaking through 12 years of winter. Then let's go home, he said. We left the community center together, his hand wrapped around mine, talking about furniture delivery and paint colors and all the beautiful mundane things that normal couples argued about. We didn't see the car, dark sedan, Nevada plates, parked 3 buildings down with the engine running and the lights off. We didn't see the man inside, watching through a telephoto lens, making a final call. We didn't know that while we'd been apart, while I'd been healing and he'd been waiting, the last remnants of his father's organization had been planning. Not a message this time. An ending. We walked 6 blocks to the subway station, laughing about something stupid, his arm around my shoulders, my hand in his back pocket. Perfect. Ordinary. Doomed. The shot came from a rooftop. Professional. Distant. The kind you don't hear until it's already done its work. 1 second, MJ was laughing, telling me about a kid in class who'd finally landed a perfect roundhouse kick. The next second, he was falling. Just falling. No dramatic stumble, no Hollywood slow motion, just his body dropping like someone had cut his strings, and me catching him because my arms moved before my brain understood. We hit the sidewalk together. His blood was hot against my hands. So much blood. MJ? My voice sounded strange, high, wrong. MJ, stay with me, stay with me. His eyes found mine, wide, shocked, confused. Aaliyah, he said, and blood bubbled at his lips. Don't talk, don't, someone call 911, someone call 911. People were screaming, running, scattering like birds startled by a gunshot they were 6 seconds too late to fear, but MJ just looked at me. I'm sorry, he whispered. Don't you dare, I said, pressing my hands against the wound in his chest, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to keep his life inside his body through sheer force of will. Don't you dare apologize. This isn't your fault. This isn't— I love you, he said, walked past, 50 women, saw nothing. I know, baby, I know. Just hold on. Please hold on. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be fine. But his eyes were already going distant. That light, the one that had burned so bright when he looked at me, the one that made me feel seen and loved and precious, was dimming. No, I said. No, no, no. MJ, look at me. Look at me. He tried. God, he tried so hard. His hand came up, shaking, and touched my face, left a streak of his own blood across my cheek like a brand. Best thing, he managed. Best thing that ever happened. You're the best thing, I said, sobbing now, my hands slick and red and useless. You're the best thing, and you don't get to leave. You don't get to go. We just found our apartment. We just decided on matching sheets. We're supposed to have time. His hand fell. His eyes went empty. And Min-jae Kang, who'd walked past 50 perfect women and frozen when a waitress smiled, who'd dismantled an empire to keep me safe, who'd taught kids taekwondo and believed in second chances and loved me like I was the answer to every question he'd ever had, died on a Brooklyn sidewalk while I held him and screamed. The ambulance came 6 minutes later. Too late. Always too late. They pronounced him dead at the scene. Single gunshot wound to the chest. Pierced his heart. He'd probably been dead before we hit the ground, they said. Didn't suffer, they said. Like that was supposed to comfort me. Like knowing he died fast made it hurt less. The police came. Detectives, FBI. Because this wasn't random. This was assassination. This was revenge served cold and patient and precise. They found the shooter's nest 2 days later. Rooftop, 400 yards. Professional setup. The kind that required training and planning and a specific kind of hate. They never found the shooter. Probably left the country hours after pulling the trigger. Probably got paid and disappeared into whatever hole the remnants of Seong-hwan's organization had crawled into. Probably lived while MJ died. The funeral was small. His father didn't attend, couldn't from federal prison, and probably wouldn't have even if he'd been free. But the kids from the community center came, 12 students in their doughbox, standing in a line, bowing to his casket with tears streaming down their faces. Grant Holloway came, looking gutted and furious, and pulled me aside after the service. "He loved you more than anything," Grant said quietly. "More than the business, more than his family name, more than his own life. I hope you know that." "I know," I whispered. "He died happy," Grant continued. "These last few weeks, after you came back, he was the happiest I'd ever seen him. So whatever you're feeling right now, whatever guilt you're carrying, let it go. You gave him something beautiful before the end." I nodded because I couldn't speak. My mother held me while they lowered him into the ground, and I thought about a smile in a ballroom, about coffee in a cheap cafe, about a man who'd promised to make me safe and kept that promise even when it cost him everything, about 21 perfect days. That was 12 years ago. I'm 38 now. I never married, never dated seriously, never let anyone close enough to matter. I run 3 community centers across New York, funded by the foundation MJ set up before he died, maintained with money he'd hidden away specifically for this purpose. We teach Taekwondo, offer scholarships, give kids alternatives, carry on his work, his dream. I think about him every day. Wonder what he'd look like at 40. If we'd have had kids. If we'd have grown old together in that Astoria apartment with the matching sheets we never got to buy. Wonder if love is always this violent. If happiness always costs this much. If choosing someone means watching them die for that choice. I don't have answers. I just have the scar on my cheek where his bloody hand touched me for the last time. I never had it removed. Never covered it with makeup. It's the only part of him I get to carry. Sometimes, late at night, when the centers are closed and I'm alone in the office, I pull up old security footage from the Queens location. Watch him teach. Watch him smile. Watch him move through the world like he was made of something stronger than the violence that tried to define him. And I let myself remember the way he looked at me in a ballroom full of perfect women and saw something real. The way he said my name like it was a prayer. The way he died trying to build a life where love didn't have to be a weapon. I walked past his grave last week, brought flowers, sat in the grass. "I'm still here," I told him, "still fighting, still trying to make the world you wanted to build. The kids are good. The centers are thriving. Your dream is alive, MJ. I made sure of it." The wind picked up, rustled through the trees, and for just a second, I could have sworn I heard his voice. "I love you." Walked past 50 women, saw nothing. Then you smiled. "I'm still smiling," I whispered, "even when it hurts, even when I miss you so much I can't breathe. I'm still smiling, baby, because you taught me that some things are worth the risk." I left the flowers, went back to work, kept living, because that's what you do when someone dies for loving you. You make sure it meant something. You make sure their love didn't end with their heartbeat. You carry it forward like a torch in the dark, even when your hands shake, even when the weight threatens to crush you. You survive, and some days, survival looks like happiness. Some days, it looks like grief. Most days, it looks like both. But I'm still here, still fighting. Still remembering the man who walked past 50 models and froze when a black waitress smiled. The man who proved that love could be stronger than violence, even when violence won. That's the story. That's the truth. And if you're listening, if you're out there somewhere wondering if love is worth the risk, worth the pain, worth the inevitable loss, I'll tell you what MJ would say. He'd say yes. 1,000 times, yes. Even knowing how it ends. Especially knowing how it ends. Because the 21 days I got to love him freely were worth every tear I've cried in the 12 years since. And I'd do it all again. I'd smile in that ballroom. I'd let him find my cafe. I'd choose him over safety every single time. Because some loves, the real ones, the ones that rewrite your entire existence, aren't measured in years. They're measured in the depth of the scar they leave behind. And Min-jae Kang left a scar so deep it goes all the way to my soul. I wear it like an honor, like proof I was loved by someone extraordinary, like evidence that once upon a time, in a ballroom full of calculated beauty, something real happened, and it changed everything, even if it couldn't last forever, especially because it couldn't last forever. That's the thing about tragedies. They don't ask permission. They just remind you that love and loss are the same currency, and sometimes the price of being seen is being left behind. But I was seen. I was loved. I was chosen, and that has to be enough. Toward the equipment closet where I'd seen MJ store things, where I knew there was a lockbox, where 3 months ago he'd told me he kept protection, just in case. I yanked the closet open, found the box, entered the code he'd made me memorize, our code, the date we met, and pulled out the gun inside. My hands were shaking. My brother had died from a gun. I'd sworn I'd never touch one. But when I turned and saw the man reaching for me, saw MJ on the ground with blood spreading across his shirt, saw the first gunman getting back to his feet, I raised it. "Don't," I said. The second man laughed. "You won't." I fired, not at him, at the ground near his feet. The bullet ricocheted off concrete with a sound like the world cracking. He stumbled back, and MJ used the distraction, moved like liquid violence, disarmed the first gunman, used the man's own weapon against him with brutal efficiency. 2 shots. Both men went down. Silence slammed into the room like a physical thing. MJ stood there, chest heaving, gun in hand, blood on his clothes, some his, some theirs. Our eyes met across the gym, and I saw him waiting to see if I'd look at him differently now. If seeing him like this, violent, deadly, exactly what his father had trained him to be, would change everything. I crossed the space between us, put my shaking hands on his face. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "Aaliyah, are you hurt?" "Just a graze," he said. "I'm okay. I kissed him, hard, desperate, tasting copper and fear and love. "We need to call the police," I whispered against his mouth. "I know. They'll have questions. I know. MJ, they came here to kill us. I know." His forehead pressed against mine. "And there might be more. This might not be over." My blood turned cold. "How many more?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I destroyed the organization, but hate is harder to kill than infrastructure. Some of the old guard took deals, others went underground. I thought I'd found them all. You can't protect me from ghosts." "I can try." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Someone had called 911, neighbors, passers-by, someone. MJ stepped back, set the gun down, raised his hands like he'd done this before. "Let me do the talking," he said. "I know how this works." The police came, then detectives, then lawyers. We spent 6 hours in separate rooms, giving statements, answering questions, watching security footage that showed exactly what had happened. Self-defense, clear, documented, legal. But that didn't stop the looks, the judgment, the way officers stared at MJ like they recognized the name, knew the history, understood that, reformed or not, violence still lived in him. They let us go at 3 a.m. We took a cab back to our new apartment, the one we hadn't even moved into yet, and stood in the empty living room as dawn started painting the windows gray. "I can't do this," I whispered. MJ went rigid. "What?" "I can't live wondering when the next one will come. Can't sleep waiting for a knock on the door or a bullet through the window. Can't watch you become the thing you've been trying not to be every time someone from your past shows up." "Aaliyah, I love you," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I love you so much it hurts. But my mother was right. Violence follows you, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to live in its shadow." He looked at me like I'd just shot him myself. "Don't do this!" he said, voice breaking. Please, we just survived. We're safe now. Are we? I challenged. Are we really safe? Or are we just waiting for the next person who wants revenge? He had no answer, because we both knew the truth. I crossed to him one last time, kissed him soft and gentle and final. I need time, I whispered. I need to think. I need to figure out if I can do this. How much time? I don't know. I left him standing in our empty apartment with dawn breaking around him. And I went to stay with Keisha, who asked no questions, just held me while I cried. I told myself it was temporary. Told myself I just needed space to breathe, to process, to figure out how to love someone whose past kept reaching for him with bloody hands. I told myself I'd go back. I didn't know I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, because while I was gone, while I was hiding and healing and trying to decide if love was worth the risk, the real threat was positioning itself.